This is Christopher Messina coming at you from the Messy Time Studios, recording as ever from the beaches of the last free state in America, Florida. I'm honored and delighted to have in the studios with me today Gary Aminoff, who fled California for the intelligent precincts of the old Confederate South, and is a retired CPA, commercial real estate broker, and has the greatest distinction ever, which I just discovered, that he ran against the evil witch Maxine Waters in her district in California years ago. Gary, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
Christopher, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Kick right in. Tell us all. We share a passion for fixing the country, and largely by fixing the federal budget. At least that's my bugbear. Just tell me what you're all about. Why you're doing what you're doing.
In my view, Christopher, did you see? I can't remember the name of it. These two women, anyway, we're a car heading for a cliff. Yeah. Our country.
Yes, Thelma and Louise.
Yes, Thelma and
Louise. Are we going to hold hands rather than go to jail? Off the cliff we're going. So what we're hoping that you and I have provided parachutes in the trunk that are secretly going to open.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And it's so important that Trump get elected. If Harris is elected president, we're going to get into even more trouble economically. Her programs are disastrous. Those that we've heard so far.
Yeah, to the extent that she's willing to talk.
Right. We are, people think, oh, we're only in debt 35 million, because that's
trillion
what national debt is. We're not, because that doesn't take into consideration unfunded liabilities of close to $200 trillion.
Yep.
And
let me break in real quickly here, because you and I know exactly what that means. But for those who are listening who've heard the phrase unfunded liabilities, all it means is Congress or another governmental organ has promised to pay money in the future for something, but they have no way of paying for it. So the governor of New York has promised that every retiree who worked for the sanitation department for a week will get $80,000 a month for the rest of their lives. And that is graven into law. And that is a liability on behalf of New York State that is not funded in any way, shape, or form. So they're going to borrow for it, or your grandchildren are going to pay for it. Sorry, go
on. So, our debt service is becoming a tremendous strain on the federal budget. The increasing spending on social programs is a tremendous strain on the budget. And now the government wants to fund all of these illegal aliens who have come in.
The poor darlings took all the effort to break the law to get here. They should be rewarded. Sorry.
Yeah. So what will happen is, as we continue to increase the debt, we're going to have more and more trouble paying it. And that's going to cause, I'm sorry, let me turn off this phone. That's going to cause much trouble in the country. Increased inflation, recession, depression, cost of goods is going to go through the roof. We have to get somebody responsible for the management of our country's money. I'm sorry to say she's probably a lovely lady.
Yeah.
But Kamala Harris is not the one to do it.
No. No, nor is the sawdust for brains puppet we have currently propped up in there with Barack Obama's hand way up his ass and moving his mouth for
Right.
him. Yeah, no, they're awful.
Yeah, it's weekend at Bernie's. But
At least that was funny and had pretty girls and alcohol. See, there's none of that. So the federal government now is weekend at Bernie's without any of the fun stuff. And it's gone on way too long. No intermission.
right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just putting out a warning to people. Nobody knows it. People think, that the government can just print more money, and no problem.
Here's a proposal I've had for a while is that every one of these idiots, I love it. Nothing makes me happier, well, in a very, very sad, death row humor kind of way, than listening to these morons on the left, starting with that dingbat bartender from Westchester who auditioned for the job as if it were an acting job, which it is. Sandy Cortez literally applied to go interviewed for an acting job. And it turned out to be this cynical leftist prick from Silicon Valley who intelligently looked at all 435 voting districts in the country, which are apportioned by, as you know, population, but not by voting population. So in that area in the Bronx, where Sandy is the representative of whatever it is, the 835,000 people in the district, some insane number like 22,000 are Americans who can vote, right? So it was a cynical play to put this dingbat in office in the first place, and it worked. I digress. There's so many layers to the leftist onion. But for those of my listeners who haven't heard of modern monetary theory, right? This stupid idea that you just print all the dollars you want and it'll be fine, despite Weimar Germany, say, and every other Zimbabwe. You just can't do that. But my proposal, sorry, I digress. My proposal is every single university that gave anyone a degree who talks about modern monetary theory should have its accreditation stripped away, or they should revoke the degrees they gave to those idiots. I've seen dingbats with PhDs in economics from Stanford sit on CNN talking about modern monetary theory like it's a real thing. It's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying how ridiculous it is. Tell me about Maxine Waters. Tell everyone who doesn't know how awful she is.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm
is there
prepping.
anybody who doesn't know how awful she is?
You can't imagine how many people don't know how awful she is. She's crazy, and her district, as you know, is one of the few districts that has gotten like psychotically poorer and more dangerous since she's been their quote unquote representative. Well, she lives in $1 million mansion far away.
Right. And her district is very dangerous.
Yeah.
You don't want to go there at night unaccompanied.
Yeah.
Maxine Waters is crazy. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
The Republican Party of LA County had a policy, or has a policy, of having a Republican in every seat, even ones you can't win.
I
don't understand it.
You mean putting up a candidate to fight for every seat?
Sorry?
You mean putting up a candidate to contest every seat, whether or not they win?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and
she's a Democrat. For those who don't know, this lunatic that has threatened to nationalize banks and oil companies on her own, she's a Democrat.
So I was the sacrificial lamb to go in her district.
What did they promise? Did you get like a new car for that, or tickets to Outback Steakhouse? Like, what was the incentive?
What I get is they pay for my signs and my political handouts.
You should have gotten some kickbacks anyway.
So anyway, I think I got 17 or 18% of the vote. I don't understand how the people in her district continue to reelect her.
She's a racist lunatic who tells them she's protecting them from Whitey. I don't have to make that up. That's what she says.
No, she is racist. There's no question.
She's crazy.
I mean,
And the fact that anyone listens to her is insane.
Right. But anyway, I took a shot. I went around in the district and talked to people and had little mini town halls.
Mm.
8 or 10 people would come out.
What's your assumption? Do you have any really engaged people who are like, this woman's a lunatic, save us from her?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
I'm sorry, no, I mean, during that campaign, did you get any folks who were like, this woman's a maniac, please save us from her? Or what was your reaction to talk to the community?
There are some Republicans in her district.
You could be a Republican, you just have to be barely sentient to understand she's a lunatic.
Right.
You could be a communist to vote against her, she's so awful. Because she does the horrible sin of a politician. She doesn't even deliver for her own district, right? That's the usual reason these awful people are in Congress, is that they may be awful, but at least they bring home the bacon to their district. She can't even do that.
No.
And that shows no inclination to do that.
I know.
Crazy.
Crazy. She is. But anyway, that was a fun experience.
I bet. And how are the every 2 years, how is the sacrificial lamb chosen? Do you play a poker game and whoever's nightly loser has to become the candidate to battle Maxine? My favorite was back in, I think it was 2020 or 2018. A young guy. He was from the neighborhood. Also African American. He came from that district, grew up there, knew how awful it was, went to the Navy, became an officer, came back, and ran against her. And his primary campaign was fantastic, right? He would walk around his old neighborhood.
I know who you're talking about.
He was great. I mean, then he went to her house and said, "Here's where Maxine lives."
That's right.
On a map, it's like 10 miles away in this beautiful home. And the collaboration of big tech and the leftist media has been going on for so long that Twitter banned him, Facebook banned him. He's running for Congress. He is a Democrat primary candidate, and they basically took down his posts. 2018 already, they're doing this.
Yeah.
Anyway.
People have to understand that the media is the publicity arm of the Democratic Party. Somebody who's a conservative is not going to get a fair shake from the media.
No.
Except for special media that, is conservative and has, 1/20th of the readers that mainstream media has.
Yeah. That's the fight we're having, right? I do remember, to be absolutely fair to the horrible, loathsome creatures in the media, I remember Lyndon Johnson's great quote was, if I held a press conference tomorrow by the side of a lake and with all the press sitting there and the cameras rolling, I then got up and walked on water to the other side of the shore, the headline tomorrow would read, "President can't swim." Right? So they've always been awful. But for a long time, they were at least quasi-independent, and now they're just a public relations arm for the Democrats. And it's really a shame for everyone. But in terms of, because the federal budget, of course, being my great preoccupation, how to fix it. What do you suggest to folks? Because my contention has been, part of the reason I wrote my book was the professional political class has made the budgetary process and the organs of government simultaneously wildly complex and also stultifyingly boring, right? And that combination means that most people who aren't obsessive maniacs will not bother to look into the details of how the federal government works, because it's just, A, it's horribly difficult to get your head around, and B, it puts you to sleep instantly. I've powered through because I've dealt with the government so much. They drive me out of my mind, so I'm motivated. But what do you say to people when you try to tell them all this spending can't keep going on? We're going to be Greece. post-collapse. Like, do they have any clue? Do they even listen to you?
I think I would estimate that at least 80%, and I may be very low in my percentage, of the people in the United States, the voters in the United States, do not understand the economic crisis that we're actually in.
Right. I believe that. Yeah. The Romans going to the theater and saying, "Don't worry about it. My visa bill, I'll pay the minimum tomorrow and it'll be okay."
Yeah. And our wonderful higher education institutions,
Well, they're too busy telling people to kill Jews, and Hamas is a great freedom resistance movement. They don't have time for petty things like economics.
That's right.
Sorry, I'm leading the witness. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, you're right. Listen, I went to UCLA, and what's going on there now is terrible. We used to walk on campus with a kippah on. There were Jewish meetings, Jewish organizations, and university was supportive because they gave us rooms to hold our meetings, and nobody attacked us.
No, why would they?
So I feel for the Jewish students at all of these institutions, Columbia, Yale, UCLA, all this
all of them
going on.
Florida. I went to the University of Chicago. I live in Florida. My daughter's in school in Florida. Ron DeSantis, going back to November of last year, said to every Jewish or other, but mainly Jewish parents in the country, if your kid is at one of these failure factories that is letting people march to kill the Jews on campus while the president, Claudine Gay, asked for context as to whether that's okay, you can transfer your child to a Florida institution right now. No cost associated with switching schools. You can come here right now. I've been delighted. And what I will point out, and I pointed out to my listeners, that the First Amendment means very little without the Second Amendment. And you'll notice whether it was the BLM Antifa Summer of Love in 2020, whether it's been this pro-Hamas bullshit going on for the last 10 months, they all do this in places where the citizenry have voted to disarm themselves. New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, right. Washington. You'll notice none of these keffiyeh-covered assholes try this crap in the South. You go and body that.
We don't have any of that in South Carolina, I can tell you.
None of it. There was some desultory attempts on one of the campuses in Florida, and a Christian fraternity set of brothers went to the Jewish frat and cracked heads of the kids are outside screaming "Death to the Jews." Wasn't covered very well. Those frat brothers beat the crap out of these pro-Hamas losers, and that's been it. There's been no more, and it is remarkable to me. I talk to my other Jewish friends in other states. Incentives matter. These people aren't stupid. You don't show up and do that in a state where everybody's armed. You go somewhere where they're unarmed. It infuriates me, these people. Infuriates me. But there are a couple of initiatives that are fighting back against that. I started a group called Project Accountability where we're basically capturing video, capturing names. Canary Mission is doing it. Jew Hate Database is doing it. The idea is that for the rest of their useless lives, you're a 22-year-old now, in from the river to the sea. You're chanting in Harvard Yard. When you're 40, you try to get, and your next job is vice president at Goldman Sachs. The HR department is going to pull the screen around and say, "Is that you carrying that sign in 2024? Yeah, get out." And I've had this conversation with lots of people, especially parents of young dipshits who may be doing this. And they're like, "But that's you can't do that. The government can't be keeping lists." I said, "Oh, I don't want the government keeping lists. You're right. This is a private sector initiative. I'm not impinging on free speech. I'm teaching these snowflakes that you can have all the free speech you want, but that doesn't mean it's free from consequences. You cannot march on a college campus today calling for the death of my children and expect for a company I invest in to give you a job in a decade. Never going to happen." So we're going to see how this plays out over time.
Yeah. I have concerns about when that generation becomes leaders of this country, where they're going to, what path are they going to take?
Yeah.
I have grandchildren. I fear for the future of this country if we don't have the proper leaders who bring back America.
Yeah. We
Instead
have
of
to.
my motto is, instead of make America great again, is make America America again.
Absolutely true. I mean, it's horrifying. And this is one of those instances where I wish I were wrong, right? But I've been talking for 20 years about the insidious Marxism and
Yep.
Jew hatred spreading on America's campuses. And I was the guy at cocktail parties that people would roll their eyes at and walk away. Okay, it's not the most exciting topic, fair enough, but it's true. And ever since October 7th, it has been the number of friends of mine who have just been startled by this. There's nothing new, and this is organized. There's this one American millionaire, I'm forgetting his name, but he fled in, I think, August to communist China where he lives. He funds a bunch of organizations. What I love about left-wing Marxists is the Orwellian names they give their organizations are usually the exact inverse of what they do,
Opposite. Yeah.
right? And so this one is like the Great Lovely People for Peace or some crap like that. And they've got 2 floors on 6th Avenue in Manhattan. And this is being looked into by the FBI and Secret Service and anyone else. Blanking on the other group, but this is the group that was marching in Times Square on the morning of October 8th, carrying printed banners. That
They must have worked all night to get those.
Someone knew. Well, right, exactly. They worked all night. No, they knew this was going to happen, and they printed those beforehand, right? And
They
that's
did.
not surprising.
They were
United
funded
Nations
to come in.
did it.
Their organizations have paid a lot of these people to come out and protest.
You bet.
They're acting auditions.
Yep. And these kids are going to find out that actions have consequences. Look, much like it was in the Vietnam era, right? I am more than willing to believe that 50% of the young men at these marches are there because some cute girl they want to sleep with said she's going to the march. She's like, oh, yeah, hate the Jews. Yeah, let's go. Right? I totally believe that. And part of me is like, that's actually better than if they're fully convinced, right? They read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion and they're like, I got it, chapter 6, right? So, I don't know which is worse, but I do get some comfort when people walk around with microphones at these rallies and they come up to some kid who's got a sign and say, what's the name of the river in River to the Sea? They got no clue. They don't know what they're talking about. They got no idea.
They
I
don't
don't know if it's worse or better that they don't know what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And there's one video,
I'm
I'm going to send it to you if you haven't seen it. It's on UCL campus. It's a young man who has gotten out of the army, so he's been in combat. He was in Afghanistan, combat veteran, and he comes up to these like 4 or 5 guys, usually these idiot middle class kids in California, with dramatic, again, hiding their faces. They're all so brave they hide their faces, right? And they're like trying to be aggressive with him, like, you can move along, and he moves right up in the guy's face. Well, I can do whatever I want. This is America. I'm a combat veteran. I fought for this country. Yeah, thank you. I know exactly what I can do. I'm not going anywhere. And then, of course, they're not used to actually people standing up to them. And these 5 kids, right, in their early 20s, look at him and realize this one man will beat the living shit out of all 5 of them. And all of a sudden, all their bravado evaporates. And they kind of edge away, and he keeps chasing after them. It's great.
It is good. It is good. I don't understand if any of these protesters understand that who they're rooting for are terrorists.
Evil people. Who torture their own people.
No question. And I don't think they realize that the United States needs Israel in the Middle East. Israel is a bulwark that keeps all that stuff coming here. Yep. And, where Israel is in the front lines of protecting Western civilization.
Yes. And these kids have been taught to hate Western civilization. And we need to
Yeah.
reverse that with
That's right.
baseball bats if necessary.
That's right. By the way, I'm chairman of an organization whose mission is to support Western civilization and to educate people about it, called American Freedom Alliance.
What's it called? What's the
American
name?
Freedom Alliance.
The American Freedom Alliance. We will give it a shout out and a link. That's excellent.
Okay.
When was that based?
LA.
Has it been around a long time, or is it a newer thing?
Been around 25 years.
Oh, nice.
And we move, we travel, we take conferences to different cities. So we were just in Charlotte, in Boston. We're going to be in Milwaukee next week, in 2 weeks, I think. And we hold conferences and educate people about the threats to Western civilization.
Have you gotten popular enough for the pro-Hamas crowd to protest you yet?
For the what?
I assume that if you get popular enough, the pro-Hamas crowd will start to protest against you.
We don't have to.
You get protests. All right. Nice.
We've had protests every time we.
That's
because
awesome.
we're known as right-wing fascists.
When you say freedom in America, it must be fascism. And I think it's because leftists are so used to lying with how they speak that whenever they hear a word, it must mean the exact opposite. That's what they do.
Right.
Right? They can't actually comprehend that you mean it. You actually are for freedom.
Right.
When they say peace and freedom, they mean violence and oppression. That's what they like to do. That's why they cover their faces and try to hide, because they're so proud of who they are.
Every time we have a conference at a hotel, we have to have our own security people.
Yep.
Because the hotel doesn't have enough manpower.
Right.
The protesters out.
Right. Well, it seemed to be a great volunteer opportunity, because I deal with a lot of combat veterans. And that would seem to be a great way for them to get a little public service while beating the living crap out of some morons.
Exactly.
Do you have that? You should have that program directly. You should. If not, I'll have you set it up.
Good idea.
Volunteer here. Come beat leftist twits. It'll be awesome.
Right.
Wow, American Freedom Alliance. I will have to come to the next event.
Yeah, we'll let you know. I don't know that we're going to Florida this year, but probably next year.
I didn't travel anywhere to harm a leftist. That's what I feel my calling in benefit of freedom is. Oh, that's awesome. Any other words of wisdom? What would you suggest for folks? I mean, you did part of what sparked this conversation was you had put something on Substack about the facts relating to unfunded liabilities, governmental promises that can't be kept, out of control money printing. Do you have any sort of kind of final thoughts? If you have a minute with a kid, you tell them.
If you want wisdom, wisdom is a very important quality for people to have. If you want wisdom, you will not find it in the American elite universities.
True.
If you want wisdom and education, find universities that are either unbiased or pro-American. Hillsdale College, that new university in Austin, they're run by conservatives. You'll get wisdom along with your education. You won't get wisdom in American universities.
Excellent. Good. Well, it's a shame what became of what used to be known as the Ivy League. I guess they still are the Ivy League, but it's more of a warning sign now than anything. Even I hate to say it, the University of Chicago has been pretty good. I mean, they first put out those principles starting when those woke cancel culture shit started back in 2016, 2017. They were like, we don't do that. We're open to ideas here, right? So I applaud them for that. They're a little weak at the knees about dealing with the pro-Jew hating mobs. They didn't let any of the kind of crap like Columbia and Harvard happen, but they weren't perfect. I've been critical of the administration for that. They haven't put up with a lot of it, and they did send the police in pretty swiftly, but not like in Florida where the cops like, please, can I beat up another leftist? That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So we like it here. So wisdom, I like
Florida's a
that.
good
So
state. Yeah.
wisdom and elect of and try to elect people who will run for office. It's telling that JD Vance, who in theory should be a hero of the left, right? Grew
Right.
up poor, mom was a drug addict,
Right.
like he should be, but he committed the unpardonable sin of not being living his life as a professional victim and needed a handout dependent upon the Democrat government machine. That's his unpardonable sin, that he went into the military, was in a war zone, got married, still married, that crazy man, has children, believes in God. Like all these are sins to the American Democrat left today. A party, by the way, JFK would not recognize, which is why his nephew is endorsing Donald Trump.
Yeah. Right.
So something's gone really wrong with the infiltration of the Marxists into the Democrat Party and the universities. And as I tell people, that makes them absolutely insane is Joe McCarthy was a weak-willed pussy, and that we need someone better to come right this ship before it's too long. So that's
The
my
Marxists have
rallying
been
cry.
trying for 100 years to infiltrate our institutions.
Yep.
They've succeeded.
They succeeded. It was a deliberate plan. I love it because you get the old declassified documents from the Soviet Union. They laid it out.
Right.
That's what I love is what they talk about. Well, that's just a crazy theory. No, this is what they said they were going to do, and they did it. And the Chinese communists are doing it now with the goddamn Chinese cultural, and they throw millions of dollars at universities to let this crap in. Well, they have got basically Chinese communist police forces in American cities going after their nationals to keep them in line, and this government has allowed that to happen. It's horrifying. Horrifying.
The things this government has allowed to happen are horrendous.
Horrendous.
And mostly unconstitutional.
Yep, I never stopped them. They hate the Constitution. Terrible, terrible thing. They hate it. But, Gary, we could talk about the perfidy of the modern Democrat machine all day long. Sadly, our listeners won't put up with it. So I want to thank you for coming on. I'll point everyone to your Substack. If there's anything else you want me to shout out, please send me a note. We'll put it in. But until then, everybody, Gary, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Christopher, for having me.
Thank you. And as a reminder to my usual listeners, please do yourselves a favor. Turn off the mainstream media who are lying to you and tune into Messy Times.